Welcome everybody to the webinar, and thank you for joining us today. We know your time's valuable. Today's topic is increasingly critical for law firm leaders, and we see this as a growing disconnect between revenue and cash flow. So while firms continue to post really strong revenue numbers, many are experiencing pressures where it matters the most, and that's cash realization and liquidity. So our goal today is to provide clear, actionable insight on how leadership teams can close this gap. Okay, here we go. So let's just start with a couple quick introductions. I'll go first. I'm Darryl Hair. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Frontline. I've been on the managed service side of the business for about 5 years. Before that, I spent 25 years on the law firm side of the industry, where I was a COO and a CFO for some AmLaw 100 firms and some AmLaw 200 firms. With that, I'll let Melissa introduce herself.
Thanks, Darryl. My name is Melissa Duff. I have been with Frontline for 18 years, and I work with, all the law firms from the top 10 AmLaw down to small law. So have many years of experience working with the different size law firms, and I look forward to speaking with you today.
All right. So with that, for those of you who are not familiar with Frontline, we're a company that was purpose-built for law firms. And that's not marketing language. It's really how we're structured. So we've been in the legal industry for over 30 years, and our teams are aligned with legal workflows, as opposed to just generic back office processes that other companies apply to law firms. We support firms and hundreds of firms across managed IT services, strategic advisory services, managed financial operations, which we're going to talk about today. And then we've been well known for a couple decades for our AI-powered service desk. What we really do is we integrate directly. So on managed financial operations, we integrate directly with our clients in several different areas of the intake to cash process. And so what that really means is we're familiar with how decisions are made, how decisions made by partners and billing teams and clients impact cash, not just revenue. All right, so we're gonna kick it off with a really quick poll question. Give it a couple seconds to tally up. All right. Well, that's interesting. It's close to 50-50. Let me close down that window on my computer. All right, so we're going to kick off today with what we see in our data from the majority of our clients, or just on average, what we've been seeing through Q1. And what we've really been looking at is fees billed, or value of revenue has gone up almost 12%. Fees collected, we're lagging behind by getting close to 2%. We do have a growth in billable hours, so we know the demand is there. And then these become really important because partner compensation is still going up, and the battle for lateral attorneys has only intensified. So that's why we thought it was a really good topic to cover this. In the bottom line, we see that the firms winning in this environment are not the ones with the highest revenue, but they're the ones that have the most efficient revenue to cash cycle. So, the other thing, that you can say is just producing revenue alone is not going to dig our way out of this. We really have to kind of focus. So the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about the strategy. So there's a definite shift that the leadership teams have to make here. And that's kind of getting away from the old mindset or the traditional revenue model, which is, and I was guilty of this for 20 years, is standing in front of partners and saying, hey, we've got to bill more time. And I've even been up in front of partners several times where I had a slide that was the value of one billable hour across, every attorney in the firm. And you figure out, by week, by month, by year, how much more revenue we can generate. But what we really never focused on was what happens later. And we would say, get all the revenue in, get all the billings in, we'll solve the problems later. So the shift that has to take place is really making cash flow and cash realization a strategy of the firm and a core operating KPI. So not just a downstream outcome. And to do this, and what Melissa is going to talk about, it's really attacking this with best-in-class process on every step of the intake to cash cycle.
Thanks, Darryl. Before I talk about the operational gaps that we see most often, I should say before we talk about solutions, I want to start with what we're seeing across the legal industry today. The challenges listed here are rarely isolated. When a firm has significant WIP sitting unbilled, it typically also experiences delayed collections, aged receivables, increased write-offs. These are all symptoms of the same operational problem. So we found is that firms often treat collections as the last step in the revenue cycle. By the time an account reaches collections, the real opportunity to influence payment behavior has pretty much already passed. The firms that consistently outperform their peers don't wait until the invoice becomes overdue. They build financial discipline into their daily operations, making cash flow everyone's responsibility and not just accounting's responsibility. So today's discussion is really about shifting from a reactive model to a proactive model. When we look at accounts receivable, can we go back to where I'm still on the other? So when we look at accounts receivable performance, it's tempting to focus solely on collection efforts, but AR is actually the outcome of several operational decisions that occur much earlier. So every delayed invoice, every unclear billing expectation, every missed attorney follow-up eventually shows up in receivables. That's why improving cash flow isn't a collections project. It's basically an operational strategy that it requires coordination across billing, attorneys, finance, and even the leadership team. So the firms make the biggest gains. The firms making the biggest gains are looking upstream and addressing those root causes rather than simply working harder on overdue balances. Next slide. One of the biggest misconceptions in law firms is that cash flow belongs to the finance department. In reality, every role influences how quickly revenue becomes cash. Attorneys influence billing timelines and client expectations. Billing teams influence invoice accuracy. Leadership influences accountability. Finance drives visibility and follow through. When these functions operate independently, delays tend to multiply. When they're aligned, firms reduce friction throughout the entire revenue cycle process. That's why we emphasize firm-wide ownership. Strong cash flow is not created by one department. It's kind of the mantra we go by. Not just created by one department, it's coordinated behavior across the organization.
And Melissa, it's interesting because just based on the last 2 or 3 months of conversations with firms, we see like billing strategy. Firms that don't have a billing strategy, it always surprises me when the number of appeals go up just because firms aren't submitting their bills on time, and there's no strategy to do that. And once that happens, your value of that bill through the appeal process is naturally going to go down. And then if I take another one in here, which is client communication, we live in this new digital age, and it always surprises me how many firms just rely on email alone to communicate with their clients when AR starts to build up. And then you start to think about today in the world of cybersecurity and imposters, how many Mimecast are filtering out external emails, and some of those might not even be getting through. So, when we go in and we talk about best-in-class performance, there is a definite equal amount of time spent in live calls and in the electronic communications. So it's a combination of all of these to eliminate friction.
Absolutely. Thanks for that, Darryl. And Frontline's philosophy, we're always about solving delays upstream, and you improve collections downstream. That's our biggest philosophy here. Um, you can go to the next slide. Thank you. Most firms focus on collecting faster after invoices are sent. We focus on moving the obstacles that slow payment before the invoice ever reaches the client. I think that's really important because, as we just talked about, delays upstream improve collections downstream. So that means shortening billing cycles, clarifying ownership, involving attorneys earlier, creating clear escalation plans. And that's, Darryl just talked about things we're seeing in the industry. That's a big one too, because a lot of firms don't have an escalation plan, or if they do have an escalation plan, they're not utilizing it effectively. I mean, an escalation plan is there for a reason. And I think it's very important that you follow through on it because you're going to see that once you have ownership into it and ownership into it, it's going to help remove those obstacles on those accounts that get escalated. Setting stronger client expectations from the beginning. I think that's very important because we find that when those expectations aren't set, clients kind of feel like they have the flexibility to pay the invoices when they want to, or kind of handle the billing or payments how they want to. And we kind of want to set those expectations at the onset of the account. When firms do these
Melissa,
things, go ahead.
let me give you a good example of that last one. So I didn't mention this before, but I spent 2 years as the VP of legal operations in a large healthcare company. And we knew, and our finance department knew, that our law firms weren't going to call about their invoices. So they automatically went into the third aging bucket. So if you're not setting client expectations, they are automatically aging your invoices. That's real world.
Yeah, yeah. So when firms do things consistently, collections becomes easier because fewer problems are being created in the first place. The difference between average performing firms and top performing firms isn't usually dramatic. It's often a series of small operational improvements executed consistently. We just talked about escalation plans. We talked about clear expectations to the client. Small changes can make a big difference. A few percentage points in realization can translate into substantial cash flow improvements and significant increase in profitability. And the firms leading the industry aren't necessarily billing more work. They're converting more work they've already completed into collected cash. And I think that's an important distinction. Success isn't simply about revenue generation, it's about revenue conversion. Next slide. Here we're going to talk about gaps between industry performance and best-in-class firms. You can see, I mean, industry as of Q1 was right at 93 and best-in-class is 98. When we study firms that consistently outperform the market, we see several themes across. They invoice faster, they review pre-bills more efficiently, they reduce the amount of work that sits in WIP. We just talked about sitting in WIP, and they eliminate unnecessary billing delays. And as you'll notice, the constant themes going on with the presentation is billing delays, or again, fixing things that are happening upstream that flow downstream. The longer revenue remains trapped in the billing process, the greater risk it is that collection challenges emerge later. So the firms creating competitive advantages today are accelerating the journey from work time to collected time. Next slide, we're going to talk about reducing lockup. So lockup is one of the clearest indicators of financial efficiency. Every day that revenue sits in WIP, receivables represents cash that has been unearned and it hasn't been realized. So reducing this lockup isn't just about improving collections, it's about improving billing velocity, accelerating the approvals, eliminating the bottlenecks throughout the revenue cycle. Those are some of the lockups that we often identify. Leadership should view lockup as an operational metric, and not just a financial metric. When firms shorten the time between work completion and payment collection, cash flow improves naturally. The next one we're going to talk about, the next leadership priority is protect realization. One of the most expensive mistakes firms make is addressing realization too late. So by the time write-off occurs, the opportunity to recover the revenue has often disappeared. The best performing firms focus on protecting realization much earlier in the process. They establish clear, again, client expectations, conduct disciplined pre-bill reviews, identify those issues quickly, resolve those concerns before the invoices become disputed. Every percentage point of realization improvement drops directly to the bottom line, which is why protecting realization should be viewed more as a profit strategy and not just a collection strategy. Leadership priority number 3, we're going to go to improve attorney accountability. And this is kind of one that is a big one to me. I think it's often one that we often see, of course, with the others as well, but attorney accountability is a difficult one. But it's where the greatest opportunity exists. Clients generally have the strongest relationships with their attorneys and not the accounting department. The attorneys are the ones they're dealing with most often. So when attorneys engage early and they address concerns quickly and support the collection efforts, outcomes improve dramatically. Just their involvement makes a huge difference. The challenge isn't willingness, it's creating clear ownership, consistent expectations, and visibility into financial performance. The most successful firms make receivables management a leadership responsibility across the firm rather than a task delegated entirely to finance. And I think it just goes back to the theme that we're all in this together. It's a team effort, and involving the attorneys is going to help that process dramatically. Next slide, we're going to go design around cash flow. So the top performing firms don't treat cash flow as an outcome. They design the processes specifically to create it. They establish payment expectations during intake. They use retainers strategically. I think that's another big one that we see as well, utilization of retainers. Again, back to the billing discipline. Billing discipline is huge. It makes a big impact on downstream. And they align multiple departments around the same financial goals. In other words, they build cash flow into the client experience from day one. When firms are proactive in financial management, collections become significantly more predictable and far less resource intensive. That's ultimately the goal, not simply collecting faster, but creating operational environment where payment happens more naturally and consistently. And I think that's a huge thing to say, because consistency is what we're looking for. Consistency in intake, consistency in billing, consistency in escalations, consistency across the board is probably the key to having the payment happen more naturally. So I guess my closing statement is that there's one takeaway from at least this discussion, is that firms achieving the strongest financial results are not relying on more aggressive collections. They're building their operational discipline throughout the entire revenue cycle. And I think that's important. When billing attorneys and finance and just leadership altogether work together with clear accountability, cash flow improves, realization improves, firms create stronger financial foundation for long-term growth. And I think that's where the greatest opportunity exists today. And with that said, I'm going to turn it back over to Darryl.
Well, thanks. All right. So one of the values that we provide to either for any law firm out there, whether it's a client of ours or whether you're not a client of ours and you're interested in what we do, we will perform a baseline assessment review, or what we call a BAR. for you, and we'll take 24 months of your data, and we'll spit out all of the different KPIs, and we'll point out, along every step of the way from billing to cash applications, where you have delays, where you are falling behind your peer firms. We can segment it by peer firms as well, and give you a full report on where you are, and then a consultative approach on what you can do or what we can do for you in order to improve this. And for anybody on the webinar, we will do this for you for free, and we'll come in and take a look, and we'll give you a plan of attack. So I would encourage you to, are we going to have a link on this or after the presentation? There it is. And I think after we finish this question, we've got, or this poll, we've got the opportunity to field some questions.
Yeah, the first question that we have is, what do you do if the partners push back on this plan?
So the way I've always looked at this is, it's really hard to bring about a holistic change across any of these firms. So my biggest plan of attack has always been, find an attorney, find a partner that knows they have a problem in the process, partner with them, add value, and 99 out of 100 times, they're going to be your champion to push this forward with their peer partners. But, there's an element of start small with incremental changes, build the value through the firm and the reputation, and then start rolling it out.
Yeah, Darryl's absolutely correct. I mean, most of the things we do are built off those relationships. So if you can build, I mean, we try to build relationships with not only attorneys, billing, everybody, because we work with them day in and day out, but building those relationships is going to take us a long way, and because the attorneys talk to each other. So they know we're doing great work for one attorney, they're going to hopefully come to us and let us do that great work for them as well. So it's kind of word of mouth, building those relationships that really help drive.
The other thing I would add on that is always lead with the data. We work in a world with attorneys where you're going to lose almost every single argument except for the ones with numbers and data. So lead with the data. It's not a lecture. It's just saying, hey, here's where you are right now, and here's where, others inside of the firm are, and we can help you close this gap.
Yeah. And small amount, don't inundate them, because if it's too much, then you've lost their attention. Kind of small amounts and then work your way up.
Next question. What's an easy place to start creating this plan and create change?
I think the easiest way is, start from the top up. Start from intake. You start that plan at intake, it's going to help affect every aspect of the revenue cycle. And it's going to be beneficial to every aspect. Again, fixing upstream is going to definitely flow to downstream.
Yeah, I would say there's two other areas. It depends, right? So this is the value of a bar, because we can go in and your biggest problem might be in billing. It really might be. The other place it is aging of receivables. Like if we see that the aging of receivables is going in the wrong direction, it's always easy to articulate to the partnership or to the management committee how much value you lose every time that receivable goes into the next 30-day bucket. And we can tell you right now, as a whole, everything that ages through another bucket, you're going to lose 6 to 8 points.
And we tend, like, sometimes people will say, well, I don't know where those lockups are. We're not sure how to identify where we have a process gap. Like Darryl said, a bar can help identify that, but also, if you have currently have frontline employees in there, we tend to be able to identify those gaps and help with that process and get it on the right track in order to help cash flow.
Next question. What is one operational change that I can make in the next 90 days that would impact cash flow?
I would definitely say that shortening the billing cycle and reducing the WIP lockup is probably the best change you can make in the next 90 days. And it tends to, every other cash flow improvement tends to follow that change.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, the longer those first two cycles are, the more it just flows through to everything else. So start at the front.
Next question. I've seen many cases of attorneys and assistants clicking fake invoices, believing that they're genuine. How do we let them know how to differentiate them?
That's a great question. I guess I would want to know more about when they say clicking fake invoices, not knowing that they're genuine. I think I would have to look at the process to identify why maybe there is a fake invoice. I know I know we have experience with what we call interim billing, which, you know, definitely is something we see quite often that is billed before it should be billed. We definitely see bill at completion that's billed prior than it should be billed. And again, remember that days of AR cycle is starting once you hit that. But identifying bills that are fake bills is something that I think is maybe something I haven't really seen too much in the past. But I could tell you that when we do see it, the collections team, when they're working the accounts, they definitely are able to identify that, because if they are reaching out to the client, reaching out to the attorney, that's the discussion that they're having, that wasn't work that was actually done. And then we start questioning why that bill was, I guess, finalized. And that helps us get to the root cause about how we try to, in the future, ensure that that doesn't take place. But that's an interesting question.
Looks like those are all the questions for now.
All right. Well, thank you all for your time. Like I said, we know your time is valuable. We hope we added some value. If you have any further questions, I know both myself and Melissa are always available through our email or through our phone numbers if you're a current client. And please feel free to reach out.
Absolutely.